Hello, my name is Alex Bristol and I'm the CEO of Skyguide, the Swiss air navigation service provider. I sit on the executive committee of CANSO and I'm also the so-called champion of data services in CANSO's Europe section. CANSO represents 34 air navigation service providers in Europe. We're the voice of the European air traffic management industry, and CANSO globally represents over 90% of world air traffic. The European Commission has published a legislative proposal to create the digital single European sky, with the objective of modernising the management of European airspace and establishing more sustainable and efficient flight paths. CANSO fully supports this goal. I'd like to share with you CANSO's position and to discuss in particular the opening of the market for data services and how we think the current proposal could be improved in order to achieve the Commission's objectives. Air traffic management is a highly sophisticated and global service, and it depends on large volumes of data, both static and dynamic. Air traffic management data services for en route flights and for aircraft in terminal airspace give air navigation service providers, airspace users and airports information on the intended movement of each aircraft and current information on actual progress based on operational data. In most countries, air navigation service providers are vertically integrated. This means that each one of them generates its own data to provide air traffic management services. In some countries, however, air navigation service providers are developing alternative concepts, particularly in the areas of virtualization and virtual centers. One example is co-flight cloud services. These are remote flight data processing services operated by DSNA of France and ENAV of Italy for my company Skyguide in Switzerland. The project has already delivered its first service contract and will be fully operational by 2025. Already today, our enterprise service bus, which runs operational systems on a service-orientated infrastructure, is monitored by an outside company. In other cases, air navigation service providers have outsourced some assets and rely on services from industry, such as for their IT network infrastructure. Exchange of operational data is also essential for the development of air traffic services for drones, known as Common Information Services. In the Single European Sky proposal, the European Commission calls for a voluntary unbundling of air traffic management data services so that it would be up to each member state to decide the extent to which it wants to open its market and separate data provision from air traffic management services. If a market for data is opened, this would have to deliver cost efficiency gains to the benefit of airspace users. Services would have to be procured through competitive, transparent and non-discriminatory tender processes under market conditions. This would be overseen by the national supervisory authorities. The legislative proposal would require organisational separation between data services and air traffic services. An exchange of operational data for drones, that Common Information Services, would require air navigation service providers and existing aviation players to create, store and maintain specific data, interfaces and equipment. These would have to meet safety, quality and security requirements applicable to manned aviation and critical infrastructures. CANSO and its members are fully committed to the digitalisation of the air traffic management industry and indeed are already driving this change in many countries. CANSO therefore welcomes the Commission's intention to open the market for data services for air traffic management, and also that this should be a decision of the Member States. We believe the regulatory framework should accommodate a range of service provision models without placing an undue burden on service providers and without unnecessary complexity. It should also create a fair, non-discriminatory and market-based environment. We believe the Commission's proposal could be improved in certain ways to achieve this outcome. Firstly, the Commission's proposal emphasises cost efficiency as a driver for data services. Absolutely yes, And CANSO believes that whilst the concept of cost efficiency is important, it should not be the only driver for the creation of this new data-based market. Alongside the precondition of meeting operational, safety and security requirements, scalability, resilience and delegation should also be a part of the considerations. Secondly, the proposal lacks any reference to how a level playing field under market conditions will be ensured, stating only that the national supervisory authorities will have oversight. CANSO believes that if one has a true market, which seems to be the Commission's belief in this area, then regulations are necessary because the market can decide for itself. And if the market is not a true market and does need regulation, then it's not clear how a patchwork of locally level playing fields, oversight by each NSA, suddenly becomes a European level playing field. Next, we question the need for mandatory organisational separation between data services and air traffic services. This approach seems over-prescriptive and ignores the financial, operational and technical interdependencies between these services in case an air navigation service provider decides not to procure or sell them under market conditions. We therefore call for this to be replaced by a mandatory functional separation between data services on the one hand and air traffic services, both en route and terminal, on the other hand, as a better way to achieve the intended objective. The proposal should also not inhibit the uptake of space-based data services. It should be the responsibility of the competent Commission Directorates General to ensure that military and defence requirements are met and that proper mechanisms are in place to prevent monopolies or oligopolies. This should ensure a fully functioning, market-based approach driven by air navigation service providers. Lastly, regarding common information services for drones, these should fall under the responsibility of a designated, certified common information service provider as the single point of access for information exchange and coordination procedures. This would create the conditions for manned and unmanned aircraft to operate safely alongside one another. And the principles for a common information service provider need to be harmonised right across Europe as well, of course. In conclusion, CANSO believes that opening the data services market for air traffic management can provide huge benefits in terms of cost and operational efficiency for air navigation service providers, benefiting airlines, and thus ultimately benefiting the passenger. We see this legislative proposal as an opportunity to achieve this, and we hope that this can be done in a way that facilitates this all-important digitalisation. Thank you for listening to our presentation. CANSO has also prepared a position paper on data services under the SES2 Plus proposal with suggestions for amendments to elaborate these. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you'd like to discuss this with us. CANSO looks forward to a safe and successful digitalised future for our industry.